letting yourself be known by your father and loved and accepted and affirmed. The fact that our starting place is the same as Jesus' starting place, which was, "You're my beloved son in whom I am well pleased," and we're here to play, we're here to shine, we're here to excel at our gifts and put them on display for the world, you know?
Yeah,
We're here to
definitely.
entertain each other.
I
So,
agree. I know that's why
yeah.
I feel like that's why this last year has been so difficult for people. I mean, myself included, is we have a lack of being together and having togetherness. And we're finding new ways of doing that, but it's not quite the same. Like we need to be around people. And,
Yeah.
how can you develop that unconditional love for everyone when you're not allowed to see everyone, you know?
Yeah. Well, I've been breaking all kinds of curfew and, restrictions myself. I hang out with friends all the time, all the more this year, since I've had more time
Good.
and really developed some close friendships. I mean, I've had some really, really spectacular times around the fire in my backyard, with
Hmm,
friends and yeah. So,
that's good.
yeah. So Cameron, I'm already recording, so we could just dive right into this. I just want to
Yeah, no
get to know
worries.
you and hear your story, and just your awakening story. Of course, it's what we're here to talk about, but just getting to know and appreciate and love you for the story you carry, in your
Thanks,
life.
Daniel. Yeah. Yeah. So it's it's not an uncommon story. I mean, I really feel like the more I get into this and the more that I talk to people, the more I realize how similar our stories are. And for me, I was in the military. I believed that that was my calling, that was my purpose in life. So, since I was a little kid, I thought that that's what I would always do. So, as soon as I was able to, I joined the military and I went off right after high school. 2011 to 2012 is when I got deployed to Afghanistan. And I was such a person that was stuck in my ego self. I was really just kind of like asleep at the wheel, kind of like you and I have talked about before, but I just was making decisions purely off of my ego self and just kind of like irrationality, right? Like 9/11 really had a deep impact on me when I was a kid. And it just reassured, it cemented the fact that I was going to be in the military and go serve my country. And now here was my chance. I finally went and did it. And I noticed that the people were not like they were being portrayed to me as. They weren't these violent criminal terrorists that I was being believed. You know what I mean? Like that was our whole premise of being there. And I just saw something completely different. I mean, like, yes, some traumatic things happened while I was there, but ultimately, I never really believed that it was their fault. I never really believed that they were these bad people that I was being told they were. And, now when I reflect on it, I feel like that's probably just some like empathic thing I was picking up on then, but didn't realize what it was until now, being an adult. But I came back and I started having problems with PTSD, and I was just a very emotionally destroyed person, and I was doing a lot of self-destructive behavior, you know, um, really creating my own hell for myself. And then it was until finally one day when I was out of the military, it was like a couple month period where I was having these revelations like, why am I suffering? Right? Like I became self-aware for a moment and I was like, why am I in so much pain all the time? Like, why am I sad? Why am I angry? Like, I don't get it. Why am I all of these things? And that thought led me into a series of thoughts and meditations where I really started to kind of like figure out who I was as a person, understanding why I chose to make the decisions I made. But even then, it all came back to the same place, which is that that's how everything is. Everything is divinely connected like that. And my life is just a piece of that. It's not this, we as people, we try to make our egos and our belief about who we are so big when in reality it's very small. Like we are these beautiful things that exist, yes, but it is just just a drop of water in an infinite sea of everything. And so we are the ones that make ourselves so big. And I realized that all of these things that I was doing to myself were causing me to be in pain and suffering. And then when I started kind of getting into this world and meditating every day and kind of trying to seek answers about myself, I ran into a guy named Ram Dass, and one of the things he said that really just stuck with me was suffering is grace. And I instantly knew what he meant by that. And that was that when we are in pain, that is our time to learn something about ourselves. Like, we don't like being in pain, we don't like being uncomfortable, but in those moments, we have the most to learn. And when we're open to it, we can learn a lot about ourselves and about other people, because what we're feeling, guaranteed somebody else is feeling too. Like, we're always focused on ourselves and what hurts us, but we forget that maybe that also is hurting other people. And so I kind of just started seeing the world in a different perspective, and I started trying to be more loving and more kind and more compassionate. And I still struggle, I'm not perfect, but I'm at least making an effort, and I'm realizing how I used to be versus who I want to be now. And so that's where I am today, but that's in a shorter way my story of how I got here.
That is wonderful. It's wonderful to hear about your story, and just the way you picked up empathically the people that were there, and they weren't as they were portrayed. It reminds me of a Black Mirror episode, if you ever watched that show,
Yes.
where
Yeah,
it was like they were hunting monsters. The soldiers were going after these monsters, but it was just like being programmed in their minds to view them that way, and they're really
that's right.
people, you know.
Yeah, it's the truth, and a lot of these shows like that, take example for the movie The Matrix, right? Like, they are shown to us in a way that we understand it, and when you see the deeper meaning in it, you realize how true it is. And sometimes, that's just the director's way of kind of poking fun at you, but there is truth in it. And that show, that episode you're talking about, is an example of what is happening. People are brainwashed. People are led to believe that these people that live in a foreign country, they're living in a third world country that's poor, and they're in poverty and they have nothing, but somehow they are strong and powerful enough to come and cause us harm over here. Sure, like, I don't discredit there are terrorists for sure, but not the entire country of Afghanistan. They're not all terrorists. They're farmers and people that have community and beliefs, and they're just trying to survive, and
Yeah.
it just changed. I saw it for what it was in real life, and then I was just never the same.
Yeah. Yeah, that would make quite an episode, even just to discuss military life. And I've always been curious about it, myself, and researched a lot of stuff and watched documentaries about war and things like this. But you know, uh, every as Mel Gibson said, every war movie is an anti-war movie.
Mm,
You know,
true.
and because the more you see of what the devastation it causes, and what it really is, and even creating enemies. I mean, like creating more terrorists just because you're posing as a threat in their country, these
Right.
sorts of things. Yeah, the us versus them mentality, instead of, hey, it's all us. That's another version of me that we're warring against, you know,
Yes, it's
at the end
true.
of the day. I would love to hear about any kind of awakening experience, like just what was it like for you? Did you have like this transition moment, um, an encounter? What happened for you?
Yeah. So pretty much when I first started meditating, um, I would sit for about 10 minutes at a time, and I would feel better. And then I would wonder, like, well, what would happen if I went longer? And I was reading about these yogis and these gurus in ancient India that were having these experiences. And I was like, all right, this is a key. This is clearly something important. So I need to figure out what it's all about. And sure enough, eventually after time, I got into meditating for probably about an hour at a time. And I had this blissful experience, where it's almost like you leave your body. I don't even know how to describe it, but you're not, when you're meditating, your eyes are closed and you're sitting, you're in the peace, you're in the moment. But eventually it's like falling asleep and you have a dream. And that's where I found myself. And I had one experience that really stood out to me, that meant the most to me, which was I was in this deep meditation and I left and I was somewhere else. And I've seen this place a couple times in my dreams. So it was familiar to me. And as soon as I was there, I recognized where it was. But the difference this time was that it was me, and I was in the it to me, it was a manifestation of Jesus, because that's exactly who it looked like. And he was there, and I was like, as a student, I was there to learn from him. And we were standing next to a stream, and he looked at it, and there was ripples in the water, and he said, "Do you know how to stop the ripples in the water?" And I said, "No." And he dropped a pebble in it, and there was ripples everywhere. And I was like, "Okay." And then he said, "Do you know how to stop this?" And I said, "No." And then he went to drop another pebble in the water, and I reached out and I grabbed it, and I stopped the pebble from hitting the water. And he just kind of looked at me in like this approving way, and like nothing was even really said, but it was like I knew in my mind what he was trying to say. And what he was trying to say was, imagine the water is your mind, right? And it's calm, and it's usually still if you allow it to be. But if you drop a pebble in it, right, and the pebble represents negative entities, negative thoughts, negative beliefs about yourself, if that hits the water, it causes the ripples, it causes the distortion in your mind. And so the way to stop that from happening is you have to stop yourself from having negative thoughts or beliefs about yourself to begin with. And then I came out of this meditation, and it was just this crazy epiphany. And I was like, oh my God, like I cannot believe that just happened. Like I understood everything that just happened. I know what the message was here. And just the fact that it even happened was just mind blowing to me. And I just realized what it was all about. It was like this, all of this stuff, right? All these ancient teachings, all these ancient people, the Buddha, Jesus, all it comes down to is learning how to be one with yourself and control your mind.
Hmm.
Not in the sense that you're, aggressively controlling it, but that you know how it works and how it operates. And when you do that, you can be your true self. You can be Christ-like if you learn how to control your mind.
Yeah, that is beautiful. Intercepting those thoughts. That's amazing. It reminds me of a scripture verse. It says, taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. And I think that's,
Mm,
there's another passage, maybe it's the same passage, where it talks about the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for the pulling down of strongholds and every high thing that exalts itself against
mm,
us, experientially knowing God. And that's what we were made for, to know that. And when you do follow that meditation practice of be still and know that I am God. That's in the scriptures, right? Be still and know that I am
right.
God. And there's a lot more to that even. When you break that down, like, interesting wording there. Interesting word choice you have there, God. Be still and know that I am God, you know?
That's right. Yes.
Ah, that we're divine beings, just as Jesus said in John 10:34, quoting Psalm 82:6. You know, I say, you are Elohim, Jesus is saying, all of you are sons of the Most High God, equals to Jesus. He's the firstborn among many brethren, and that it's really Christ being formed in us. What is the essence of the Christ? Love, right? At the end of the day, and peace. There, what else would you say? What's the essence of the Christ?
Mm. Our birthright, who
Yeah.
we are, right? Compassion, love, and peacefulness, right? Like, okay, here's what I say to people, right? Like, I have a podcast, I write articles, and my wish is to help people understand this better. And what I try to tell people that are interested and that are seeking answers, right? Like, how are you living life right now? Do you enjoy it? Are you happy? Are you truly happy? And sometimes people will lie and say yes, and then I'm like, but are you really? Like, I'm not talking about just like, do you get to get Starbucks on your way to work tomorrow? Do you get to, eat cheesecake before you go to bed? Are you really happy? Like, do you live your life without doubt and without fear and without, anxiety? Then that's the one that gets people the most, is the anxiety and the depression. And they know that they are feeling that. And what I've found is that so many people, it's not just a small percentage of Americans or even people around the world that are experiencing depression, anxiety. It's almost everyone. And
Yeah.
the reason they are is because they don't know what their mind is. They don't know what it is to be in the path of Christ, or to follow the way, or be of the Tao, like we've talked about.
Yeah.
They don't know it yet. And so that's part of what this whole experience is about, is to learn how to be that way. And through our trial and error, through our suffering, and through grace, we learn, and we are stepping in those footsteps.
Yeah. And I would say that just putting love into practice, Like if I were to categorize like, okay, on a list of spiritual practices to get you there, and then like enjoying the Christ life, the flowing in the Zen of being and living out of your true identity, the Christ-like identity, the Christ identity, right? What spiritual practices would you put near the top? I'd love to
Mm,
ask you that question. I mean, I have my own list. I'll save mine
okay.
for after what you have to share.
So meditation is the biggest one. Meditation is great. But something I also do is journal. I
Mhm.
journal because it's a moment for me to be honest with myself when I make mistakes or when I'm acting a certain way. I've I slip up all the time, right? I mean, I say something I don't mean, or I fall back asleep and I'm into the egoic mindset, and I'm acting and doing things and not realizing, right? Not understanding what it is to be human and our divineness of ourselves, because it's very easy, right? Like that's why most people don't understand it. They fall back into it every day because there's always something to be afraid of. There's always something to worry about. And so it's easy to fall back in that. And that's why that's why people like us are so important, because it gives people, the coin phrase I have is a lighthouse, gives people a chance to see the way and follow it if they choose. But journaling, meditation, praying, definitely just in moments when you need clarity or honesty. I feel like if you're genuine about it and you surrender to the moment, you will get the answers you're seeking. I mean, anybody of faith that is doing that already knows how powerful prayer is. And I would encourage people that, like, especially right now, if you're feeling anxiety, if you're feeling depression, that is the way, just be honest and truthful, because that's the problem. Is part of our subtle anxiety is that we're not completely truthful about how we feel about the present time. We're afraid. Some people try to pretend that they're not afraid, or that this isn't a concerning time to be alive. And that's just kind of the American way, right? We kind of just bury our emotions and feelings, and we pretend that it's not valid or realistic. But if we would just be honest with ourselves and surrender to the moment, like, we would actually feel better. It would feel like a whole off your shoulders.
Yeah, a whole weight off your shoulders. That's amazing. And to realize that we're in this together. We've got each other's backs, and just showing
Mm.
that just love for one another, recognizing that to love another is to love yourself, to forgive another is to forgive yourself. And so for me, it's like shedding off that which hinders living out of your true Christ identity. What would be helpful to shed? Well, forgiveness, shedding the bitterness, shedding unforgiveness by forgiving truly from the heart all those who've offended you, because any kind of bitterness or grudge is a barrier, is a block between you and experience. It's a stronghold in your mind, from to experience the one, the all, our loving Heavenly Papa, to put it in very personal terms, just like, I don't know if you ever watched the movie The Shack. Have you seen that?
I don't think I have. No.
I'd highly recommend it. Um,
Okay.
it's a really good one. It's about forgiveness, and there's a lot of
Mm.
beautiful lessons in there, and really the intention, the heart behind what Papa, Son, and Holy Spirit want, in us and with us. That we're invited in to be the fourth member of the Trinity, so to speak.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
and it's amazing how much they honor us
Mm.
as even as equals. Like what? That was I think that's hard for a lot of people of Christian faith to accept that, because we've kind of been trained in worm theology. I'm a worm and not a man. Guess who said that, by the way, in the Bible? Jesus. He's the one who became sin so that you would never have to, you know, uh, identify with that ever. And he rendered you innocent and as pure and holy as the Father himself. So I love talking about all that, the intricacies of the gospel. This is what I think about theology as a beautiful thing when we're studying the one who is perfect theology, Jesus Christ, who the incarnation of the Father's heart, the incarnation of perfect love, and and unpacking our identity and just exploring him, you know.
Mm,
We get to
yeah.
come to know who we are, the Christ who lives in us. So
It's as easy as making a choice, right? Like that's what it comes down to is, and that's why, right? Like everybody doesn't understand, like we all know we have free will, but how many people actually understand it? What is the purpose of free will? Purpose of free will is so that you will inevitably make the choice to be Christ-like, that you will walk in that path because you know that it's not just for yourself, it is for everyone. And the sooner that we realize it, we also realize the fact that our eternal happiness isn't possible unless everyone is there, right? Like you'll
yeah,
never be able to be 100% free unless everyone's free. That's the
yeah,
truth. Because if
yeah,
you're free and somebody else isn't, you're not truly free because there's still restrictions. There's still not 100% unconditional love for every single person, right?
yeah,
If somebody else isn't free and you are, maybe you've got your head in the sand and you're not paying attention. But until truly everyone is accepted and treated the same and we all have unconditional love for each other, there is no such thing as freedom, like in the sense that we want it to be, right? You're free in your mind and you're free to imagine and think whatever you want. But we're talking about now heaven on earth. And that is what we are here to do. It takes every single one of us. And when I say that, I don't mean that like every single one of us needs to be a Christian or has to be in one particular faith. What I mean is that every single one of us understand that we are all at fault for what happens. Our each and every single one of us have an individual ego identity that causes the problems. And when we learn to work with that and we do it all together, right? Because everybody has to take care of their own before they can take care of another's. You take care of yours, everyone else follows in suit, and then we have like a real community of loving people. But until that happens, like we're just going to be fighting, or it's going to be an uphill battle at least.
oh, wonderful, wonderful. I was just taking in what you were saying. I was like, I wasn't even preparing anything to say in response, just because I was like, thank you, Cameron, for sharing that. You know, taking care of our own. I'm just gonna kind of repeat what I heard here.
Yeah.
Taking care of our own egoic, you know, belief system, the stories we tell ourselves. You know, there's this thing about ego death, and really, what ego death is
Mm.
taking off the mask that's suffocating us. You know, and it's that, what a picture that is, just taking off the mask that's suffocating us, the masks we wear that we present, you know, to one another, like I'm a badass and oh, I'm cool, you know. You want to be like me, I'm
Yeah.
confident, you know, like all the ways we act and play the hypocrite. That's what a hypocrite is. It's a mask
Yes.
wearer in a play, and you know, and if we got real, and I've been experimenting with this on my channel of just like here's the real Daniel. You get to see the into me, you know, and I even drop the F-bomb every once in a while, you know, when it's appropriate, you know, and just being real, you know.
Good.
So yeah,
Honesty. Yeah.
yeah.
Back to Ram Dass. He's just one of my
Oh, thank you.
all-time favorite teachers. I just love him. But he had two virtues that he lived by, and those are the same two that I try to live by, and that's tell the truth and love everyone.
Hmm.
And he has a cute little story about him and his guru that he says with that story. And anybody who's probably heard about Ram Dass has heard that story. But the essence is that if you hear those two things, you think, well, it's one or the other. I can't tell the truth and love everybody. I can only do one or the other. I can only tell the truth, which is I don't love everyone, or I can pretend to love everyone and not tell the truth. But the reality is that the only way for those two virtues to work and for you to actually do it is to realize that the thing in you that thinks it can't tell the truth or that it thinks can't love everybody is also in every single person that you're engaging with. And then that one mutual thing that we have in common, we can use as a factor for forgiveness.
That's beautiful. I love it. These are the kind of conversations I love to have with friends, you know, over a cup of coffee or whatever, just shooting these things, uh, you know, these
Yeah.
ideas and reflecting on them. That was brilliant. I really connected with that. Tell the truth and love everyone, right? And wow, you posed the dilemma right there, because I deal with that. Do I have the love in my heart? Do I have what it takes to love everyone? Really? and I explore the depths of that, like imagining one of the worst criminals, and then the worst crimes
Right.
against humanity. And can I love them? That's another version of me. It really is. They just got super confused and about, what they should be doing or whatever. I wanted to express this movement. Do I honor their choice? Do I understand them? Can I forgive them? Really? And love them. I think forgiveness is really one way we show love and bring healing to the world through this forgiveness. You know.
If you're open to it, I'd love to share a story about like how I personally handled that question for myself at a
Okay.
time when I was struggling with this. Okay. So kind of at the beginning of this, journey for me, or this like awakening process, I had the same thought. How can I love everyone? And the one thing that got me stuck was people who hurt and abuse children. And I was just like, there's just no way. I don't how, right? Like, cause this is before my transition. So I'm trying to ask the questions and I'm like, how does Jesus forgive children, pedophiles or people who would abuse children? How could he do it? And I kept thinking and thinking and thinking, and I meditated on it. And then something came to me. When I was in the military, I was kind of a jerk. I was a very violent and mean person. I had to fill a role. I had to play a role in the position that I was in. And I was aggressive and I was mean. And at the time that I asked myself that question, all I could think was, well, I would kill that person. I would definitely kill that person. I would take their life from them. I would hurt them, because anybody that abuses children or hurts children deserves to be punished to the fullest of my ability. And then it hit me that if I really felt that way, and if I really would act on that, and that's how I would treat that person, then I'm no better than somebody who abuses children. Like maybe some people might sit here and think, well, yeah, that person deserves it. That's not what Jesus would do. That's not what Buddha would do. That's not what these teachers tell us to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to learn forgiveness. And the reason that I learned how to forgive people like that is because that I am no better. And I'm just as equally guilty of thinking horrible thoughts and having problems and being human as anyone else. The difference is that I acknowledge it and that I'm working on it every day to be a better person by forgiving those who need forgiveness. Because ultimately, it's not our responsibility to judge people. Karma does that for us. The law of the universe protects us and does all things, right? If you get murdered and somebody kills you, that person will get theirs in the end. Your karmic debt always gets paid some way or another in this life or the next. So it's not up to us to judge or decide who's wrong and who's right. That's not what we're here for. That's not our purpose. The purpose is to do two things: tell the truth and love everyone. And until you can, it's your job to work on it.
I just realized I was muted. I was like, yeah.
Mm.
Some of what you were saying just reminds me of a song by Sufjan Stevens. Uh, what's it called? John Wayne Gacy Jr. by
Mm.
Sufjan Stevens. Beautiful song, but it's about um, it's about a dark situation.
Right.
And he talks about at the end, he says, and in my best behavior, I am really just like him. Look beneath the floorboards for the secrets I have hid. And see, this
That's
is
right.
what we're afraid of exposing to the world, our weaknesses. And Paul said he boasted of his weaknesses. And there he found tremendous freedom in that, and freedom in like pouring out your heart to the Lord, just like inviting Jesus into all those weaknesses, letting him see into you, because we're made to be, for intimacy. Into me you see. I like that, breaking it down like that. What a wonderful way to understand it. Like, Jesus, see into me. There's a lot of closets of shame and guilt, and he's like, thank you for letting me see into you, and in turn you get to see into God and experience the kingdom. This is how we enter, uh, with the humility of a child, with the dependence of a child. Really, it's like, I'm completely dependent on you, which means you're poor in spirit, and yours is the kingdom of heaven. There you go. Jesus says, it's my Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And when we understand what we can potentially connect to in the ether, that we have an enormous family of billions and trillions of holy ones who've got our back, who are rooting for us, and who are here to engage with us and help us as spirit guides, that we can channel, in prayer and meditation and connect with in the ether. It's wonderful, and get coached about things. So those
Mm.
are some of my thoughts, just in response to what you're saying. I have to check out more of Ram Dass, because I haven't listened much to him. So
Mm.
is there anybody else that you love listening to and you'd recommend as kind of a resource for people?
Yeah, yeah. So thankfully, over the pandemic, I fell back in love with my with my habit for reading. So I've had a bunch of time to read. But so if you're a seeker and if you're looking to understand yourself better and understand what unconditional love is, Ram Dass, obviously, Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a Vietnamese monk. He's written a lot of books, but he's just a wonderful speaker. Alan Watts is good, but Alan Watts is just a little bit different. I typically say that like the difference between Alan Watts and Ram Dass is that Alan Watts says and asks the questions that kind of are like the meat pounder to your brain, and it kind of shakes up things because you're like, I don't understand what he's saying. Ram Dass is the person to follow up with that because he's so kind and compassionate, and he offers such a beautiful way of explaining what he's trying to, like the points that he's trying to get across and the stories that he tells. It's just he's a wonderful storyteller, and he says it in a way that helps people realize their own inner being, kind of like the way that you and I understand things.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I just recalled I do have a friend that I've interviewed on my show, who likes Ram Dass as well. And yeah, so I'd certainly am going to check him out, listen to some of his stuff. Um, yeah, Cameron. So I was just curious just about your life there. You live in Tennessee, Nashville?
Yeah, Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah.
I was just telling a story last night about a time I went to Nashville and just kind of a breakthrough I had on the road down there, with the Lord, just in
Mm.
prayer. We're driving to Nashville to go pitch our songs to some song sharks. There's a lot of there's some shady business going on in Nashville. We got suckered into one of them. We tried to make the best of it, but yeah, yeah. So, and you're
Mm.
married?
Yes. Yeah, married and I have a stepson.
Wonderful. That's great. Great being a papa. So I bless you in that. I mean, just raising the next generation, what a calling, what a high calling of like
Yeah.
imparting beautiful stories into their souls to carry with them through their life. Like I tell my son what I love about him. I love how gentle you are and how forgiving you are, and just like drawing that Christ in him and how sensitive he is. It's like I want that to stay with him, to be that empath, to truly show Christ's love. Jesus
Mm.
described himself as gentle and humble in heart. I just want to nurture
Right.
that in our kids.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah, the next generation, I mean, we're already seeing so many changes. We're already seeing people evolve and expand their consciousness just in this time period that we live in. The
Yeah.
children will, I mean, our children are really going to live in a really unique time where the expansion of consciousness is going to be vast and deep. And even already they're smarter, right? They're more educated. They understand things better than we do. We don't like to admit it, but they do. They're asking questions. They're doing things intuitively. And they're not as closed-minded as, even us or our parents were. And
Yeah.
this is something that I've, seen and that I understand well is the lineage of us and our parents and their parents and their parents, right? Think about all of the major discoveries we've made, right? Like talk about the pyramids, right? Pyramids were like the first person to write a book about it and really have a lot of information about it was in the 1880s. People just weren't educated then. They just weren't that smart. And a lot of what we know is from an old time where they weren't really as equipped to learn and receive things because they were so close minded. And there is a rich and vast, beautiful history in our past that we don't even know about because our predecessors were too close-minded to have figured out what it was really about. And I think that this generation and then the next will be the ones that'll have to go back and really look through our history and determine what was true and what needed a deeper look.
Yeah, I think that's really cool that you bring that up. There is, I research and just, share a lot of esoteric things on my show. And you actually help to define it and give words to what my show
Mhm.
is about, expanding people's consciousness. I couldn't figure out for the life of me, like, why do I keep camping out on these things that are like trigger points for Christians? Like, I'm really shaking the boat, seeing who's gonna fall out, and I'm like, why do I keep doing this? And you're like, and you put it into words when we did our interview on your show. Tell people what it's called.
Yes. So my podcast is Hermit Radio.
Wonderful. On Hermit Radio. Yeah, in our discussion there, and you just said expanding people's consciousnesses. I'm like, that's what I'm
Mm.
doing. Yeah. I'm helping just to stretch people, into expanded consciousness. I mean, the interview I just posted like an hour ago was about contact with aliens, and not to be an alien racist. My wife jokes about that because she's like, yeah, you're not even just broaching the subject. You're like, whoa, like bringing us all the way to the point where like, hey, don't be an alien racist, like totally assuming they're real, obviously, like we're way beyond that.
Right.
you know, and just other things too, like bilocating, spirit travel, and speaking with your ancestors and bringing healing to them. He has an amazing story of when he did this. He went to the grave site in his family lineage, in Scotland, and he's like the spirit. He's told him to go there by the host of heaven, told to go there at the specific time, and he goes there, and then he's hearing these Scottish voices like, "I'm here, I'm here too," and like these, and his ancestors were there, and he was brokering like a peace between them, and forgiveness and healing and restoration and release for them to, you know, have a bit brighter experience. So it was really cool.
Mm. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. Mm.
So, but I just want to thank you so much for your time, Cameron. Too. I know this isn't our first conversation, and I'm glad for that, to make a new friend. And yeah, we're tracking together
Yeah,
in life. So bless
definitely.
you. I like the whole namaste thing too. The Christ in me bows to the Christ in you.
Yes. Yes. It's so
I
true.
I
We do
recognize
such a simple thing.
yeah, the divine spark in you.
Hmm.
Beautiful light filled soul. Bless you, Cameron. Bless you and your family,
Thank you, Danny.
and your ability to tell the truth and to love everyone.
That's right.
Bless you.
I know. Two things. That's all you got to do.
Wonderful. Well, we'll leave people on that note. How about that? Just to
Indeed.
meditate on that.
Until next time.
Okay.
Mm.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, man. Have a good one.